What's going on? All right. I know I'm late. I'm sorry about that, everybody. Wow, we've already got a bunch of people on here. This is great. It's like everyone was sitting around waiting for me who was sitting here late, right? I did post that I was going to be late, so I apologize about that. We had an OB appointment. As you may know, my wife is pregnant and we're due in May. So we had an OB appointment and it just ran over and it just ended up throwing the wrench in the whole day. So I apologize for being late, but I tried to post and let people know. Anyhow, this might end up being a really good time to do these kind of broadcasts because it's a little bit later and maybe people are home from work. Maybe people are able to sit down and just enjoy the live broadcast and talk about everything. So you may have seen in the thumbnail, I got a little bit of testing done end of last week and I'm down 2.9% body fat, which I was already pretty lean. So I'm pretty happy about that. That's pretty cool. Now I will say, this was with a hydrostatic weighing. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. The point is that there's probably a little bit of discrepancy there. However, point is I'm down 2.9% based on the same kind of testing that I did at the beginning. But this isn't about me. It's about you guys. So I want everyone to comment where they're watching from. Comment. Just let's start with that. Go ahead and comment where you're watching from, and then let's go ahead and let's get into some questions. I want to use this time to answer questions. And you guys may hear I have a little bit of congestion. I barely caught that little chest bug that's been going around, and then it just kind of lingered just for a little bit. So I apologize that it was just kind of some congestion. Okay, we've got Florida. We've got, holy cow. Okay, we've got Michigan. I can't even keep up with this. This is awesome, guys. Okay, so we've got almost 1,000 people on this broadcast. Oh my gosh, wow. I don't know if I've ever seen it blow up like this. This is crazy. Welcome, everybody. We've got New Jersey in the house. We've got Ohio. We've got Montana. We've got New York. We've got more New York. We've got Australia. We've got Woodlands, Texas. We've got San Francisco, San Diego, Dominican Republic, Nashville, Tennessee, Woodhaven, Michigan, Porterville. Holy cow, this is awesome. All right, you guys. Well, let's go ahead and let's dive right in. I do want to make sure you hit that like button, hit that thumbs up button. That way we can get a bunch of just good, good engagement here. And I want to talk about where people are right now, see how people's overall success with the intermittent fasting challenge is so far, and where the struggles are for people, because I want to be able to address how we can make this a long-term change, okay? How we can actually make this something that we stick with for a long period of time, and what you can start to implement in terms of your intermittent fasting regimen to continue this path, right? To make it a long-term play, because the issue is when people start intermittent fasting, they start thinking that, oh, shoot, this is great. I'm going to continue this as a lifestyle. And the next thing you know, they can't keep up with it because I shouldn't say they can't keep up with it. They plateau because they end up doing it so much that they get their metabolism to a point where it's just not adjusting anymore. So I think we need to talk about longer term fasts. We need to talk about some other things that we can do and just different ways that we can kind of implement different tools, different supplements, different exercise modalities, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, someone says, sounds like I have a little bit of a cold. Yep, I just mentioned before, I'm just on the tail end of this little thing. You can't beat it. When you got kids in the house, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can do as many ice baths as you want, but the point is when you're in close proximity to that stuff, sometimes you're just going to catch it. But it's not too bad. It's fine. Anyhow, so the first question that popped up that I thought was really good, I've been doing alternate day fasting, and can you recommend something for when you break your fast in the morning? Okay, so this is a question that's come up a few times, and I apologize, lighting is a little bit weird right now. I'm testing out some new lights, but the other simple fact of the matter is it's dark out, so I have to use the overhead fluorescence, and anytime I have overhead lighting, it's going to give me raccoon eyes and stuff, so I'm sorry about that. Okay, so people may have seen my videos talking about alternate day fasting, where they are actually having to break their fast in the morning, and I feel like it's a good question to address because it's just a common one. The same rules are still going to apply, okay? So when you break your fast in the morning, more than likely you're going to be very, very insulin sensitive, okay? Now, at the end of a fast, you're already insulin sensitive, okay? What that means is that whatever you consume, your body's going to really absorb. But in the morning, you're already even more insulin sensitive. And then, assuming you're working out in the morning, you're going to be really insulin sensitive. So if you are breaking your fast first thing in the morning, it is very important that you keep it exceptionally lean. Now, that being said, from a genetic standpoint, and there is a BMC genomics study that talks about this, our bodies can actually handle more fats in the morning. So should that mean that we should go ahead and have those fats? No, it means that we have more leeway, more flexibility to potentially have more fats, but that doesn't necessarily apply with intermittent fasting. And I address that only because I've talked about it in videos before, and I want to make sure that people understand it, okay? So what that means is that from a genetic standpoint, our bodies typically can utilize more fats in the morning without them going to storage. But that doesn't necessarily apply with intermittent fasting, because with intermittent fasting, you're manipulating your insulin so much. So my advice for someone that's breaking a fast in the morning is going to be to keep it as insanely lean as you possibly can. Okay, so we're talking like really lean chicken. We're talking really lean protein shake. It's essentially the same as what you would break your fast with otherwise, except you're just going to be extra critical with it. Okay, another question that comes up says, during a fed period, do you have to be in a caloric surplus to build muscle? So I've talked about this before, but caloric surplus is relative, right? If I were to eat a piece of chicken right now, would I technically be in a surplus at this very moment in time? Yes, I probably would be, right? For this nanosecond, I would be in a surplus. So the word surplus is kind of relative, right? So you have to look at like when your hormones are aligned, when your mTOR levels are, or mTOR activation is aligned. And what that means is like when you are in the mode of building muscle, that is the only time where a caloric surplus matters. And when I say mode of building muscle, we don't really know when that mode is, right? We can't always tell that. And what I mean by that is that, like, if I were to go work out right now, my protein synthesis might be elevated shortly after the workout, but I don't know at what exact point in time my body is quote unquote building muscle. It might be building muscle right after the workout. It might be building muscle six hours after the workout. I don't know. So only if we are in a caloric surplus during the time that true protein synthesis is occurring, can we guarantee that we're going to build muscle and have that surplus be effective. So my point in saying that is that you don't necessarily need to be in a surplus for the day. You need to be in a surplus for that point in time. So if you have a shortened consolidated eating window and you're trying to build muscle, as long as you are in a surplus during that eating window, then you're going to be fine. Okay, so let's just break it down into kind of a mathematical situation here, just for those that are a little bit more math-minded. If we're supposed to eat 2,000 calories in a day, okay, this is totally hypothetical, but it's simple math. If we're supposed to eat 2,000 calories in one day, that would imply that half of our day, we should eat 1,000 calories, right? Well, if we fast for half of the day, and this is purely hypothetical just by example, for example, if we fast for half of the day, then anything more than 1,000 calories is going to technically be a surplus for that respective period of time. Okay, because we're supposed to eat 2,000 calories over the full day, then adjust that for a half a day, it should be 1,000 calories. If we're eating 1,400 or 1,200 calories during that half day, then technically we're in a surplus for that period of time. So if we're in a surplus for that period of time, then as far as our bodies are concerned for that period of time, once again, we are probably going to build some muscle. Okay, so hopefully that makes some sense for everybody. I know it's a little bit convoluted and it's a little hard to wrap your mind around, but that's the simplicity of it. Okay, wow, we've got so many good questions. Okay, guys, make sure you do hit that thumbs up button, please. That really does help me a lot. If you hit that little like button, that thumbs up button. Okay, someone says, I'm stuck at 14% body fat. How can I drop lower? I'm doing keto and 24-hour fasting. Okay, I did want to address this kind of stuff because obviously we have people that are hitting plateaus right now. They're 3-4 weeks into this challenge and all of a sudden they're hitting plateaus. Okay, they've had good success. And I'm going to ask everyone their results here so far in a minute. But, you know, I want to address this. So the first thing that I usually tell people to do, and this goes against the grain of what a lot of keto people will say, is to actually, the first thing you want to do is like actually reduce the fats a little bit. Now, why do I say that? Because gram for gram, fats still store easier than carbohydrates. I know that sounds crazy and I know it sounds completely wacky, but fats still, from a simple molecular standpoint, will store easier than carbohydrates. Does that mean that you shouldn't be eating fat and you should be eating carbohydrates? Absolutely not. No, what it means is that if you go over, if you have an overage or you are in a surplus, it is easier to accidentally gain weight via the surplus of fat than it is a surplus of carbs. So when you're doing keto, if you slip up and you go overboard, you have a higher potential of that getting stored. Now, when you're in a deficit, you have more power. So I know it's so complicated to say in a short amount of time, but with great power comes great responsibility is basically what it comes down to with keto. Okay, so with keto, if you're in a deficit, you're going to burn fat really fast. on keto, if you're in a surplus, it's easy to gain fat. So I usually say with keto, you don't want to go too far overboard surplus because it's easy to gain fat, but it's okay to go aggressive and burn fat. So when I come back to answering your question, if you're hitting a plateau, trim the fats down. I always suggest backing the fats down about 25% to start. Okay. You can even go less than that, but 25% is all you got to do is back it down a little bit, back it down, and then you'll see some pretty amazing results. And I don't care, even if you swap out the calories for protein, if you want to get complicated with it, if you want to cut down 25% of your calories from fat and replace it with 25% calories from protein, I'd be totally okay with that. The point is that we need to reduce the fats because for whatever reason, that's probably why you are plateauing. Okay. It doesn't go for everybody, but it's usually the case. It's usually the simplest solution for people. Now, I don't want everyone to reduce the fats too much, but you see, we live in this world with keto where we think that fats are everything. No, our body has plenty of fats to burn. Trust me, our body can pull from lots of different fat stores. Okay. I was 7.5% when I started this challenge. And trust me, even at 7.5%, my body had a lot of stuff to pull from. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's move on to some other questions. We've got lots of good stuff coming through here. Okay. Someone says, well, actually, nope, just lost it. Hey, Thomas, I've been doing a 20-hour fast, 4-hour eating warrior diet for a month and a half. I've lost 35 pounds so far, and I've never had a cheat meal. Is it okay to have 2 to 3 donuts tonight? It's a good question. Okay, donuts aside, okay, first things first, I would probably suggest finding a cleaner cheat meal. Okay, the reason I say that is simply because when you look at a donut, you've got a massive amount of gluten, massive amount of inflammatory response is going to happen within your body. Plus, you have a bunch of sugar. I understand with a cheat meal, you're going to have sugar. It's all good. I get it. But I would highly recommend probably going for like gluten-free donuts if you can, just to at least reduce that impact on your body, make it a little bit easier. The short answer is yes, you're probably going to be just fine because every once in a while, your body needs leptin to actually send that signal. Let me explain how leptin works and how leptin works with cheat meals, because this is a really important thing to know, especially if you've been doing a lot of fasting and you're hitting a roadblock, you're hitting a little bit of a hurdle and you feel like you need to change it up. Okay. Leptin is a communication signal that goes from your fat to your brain, to your hypothalamus. Okay. So it's really simple. The fat cells essentially call your brain and they say, hey, brain, we have plenty of fat on hand. Okay, so go ahead and rev up the metabolism. It's fine. Basically, it's the fat calling the brain saying, hey, we got plenty of us laying around. Go ahead and burn us. It's fine. So we want leptin signaling to be high. Okay. Now, what happens is when we diet and when we reduce calories, it reduces that leptin signaling. It slows down how much the leptin calls the brain. And when the leptin doesn't call the brain as much, guess what happens? Well, then the body doesn't turn up the metabolism. In fact, it turns it down because the brain's no longer getting the phone call from the leptin, right? The brain is like, hey, leptin hasn't called me in a while telling me to burn fat. I better turn off fat burning. Okay. Now, when you have a cheat meal, specifically with carbohydrates, that cheat meal is going to restore those leptin levels, at least temporarily. Okay. It's going to restore them so that all of a sudden they pick up the phone, the fat cells call the brain again. So it really does make a difference. So you might notice that with your cheat meal, sure, you get a little bit of a leptin spike. Now, there's a very big important thing that everyone that has a cheat meal needs to know. Okay, 2 things. One, the false hunger. I call it false hunger and the false fat burning. Okay, how many times have you had a cheat meal and the next day you feel like you are just ravenous, and you feel like, oh man, this diet has to be doing something today because I am hungry. I am hungry. Okay. I'm sure a lot of people have done that, right? Okay. That situation is quite simply explained. That is purely a blood sugar response. Blood sugar goes up from the cheat meal and it comes crashing down. Okay. Big problem, right? Well, that's going to make you feel hungry. That's going to give you the illusion that, okay, yeah, maybe I'm burning fat, yada, yada. Not really the case. Now, the other thing that you have to be aware of is in order to truly get a good leptin spike, you actually need to have more than just one cheat meal. Now, I encourage people to look at it like this. From an evolutionary standpoint, if you were to be living 1,000 years ago and you went out, or maybe say 2,000 years ago, and you went out and you made a kill, okay, Well, would that kill just provide one meal, or would it provide a good amount of food for probably a week or so? Well, depending on your tribe, depending on all that stuff, it probably is going to give you food for a few days. So to truly restore leptin levels, you actually need to have a surplus of calories for a few days. Okay. So have a cheat meal because you need the mental reprieve. Okay. Have a cheat meal because you need it psychologically. Don't try to kid yourself into thinking that you're doing something physiological that's going to magically change the course of your diet. Sometimes just the mental break is all you need, and it helps you out a ton. Okay. So go right ahead with that. Now, I will say, in terms of a cheat meal, sure, enjoy that. But if you're ever trying to do a refeed, the strategy needs to be more like a few days. Okay. It needs to be 3-4 days of slight caloric surplus, maybe 20% above baseline for a few days, 20% above your baseline calories, and that should reset you a little bit more. Okay. Hopefully that answers that question. Okay. I do want people to go ahead and comment how much weight they've lost so far on this challenge. Okay. Because this challenge has been immensely successful. I think we have over 400,000 people viewed the original video. So that's pretty awesome. And hey, guys, just so you do know, I say this in all the live broadcasts with this challenge. In case you didn't know, the special discount for ButcherBox that's down below in the description was extended throughout the entire challenge. So I put a new link down below. ButcherBox sponsored this challenge and provided the meat for a lot of people doing the challenge. I think something like some crazy amount of people, some like 6,000 people or something took advantage and used ButcherBox for it. So super cool. But I mentioned it last week. I mentioned it the week before. The link down below is now still valid. Originally, it was only going to work at the beginning of the challenge, but we had so many people that were still coming through. We wanted to extend it. So that link is just the first link down below in the description to get the special pricing on ButcherBox. So grass-fed, grass-finished meat to your doorstep. It's just right down below. So just make sure you check it out after you watch this video. No pressure or anything like that. It's just a good price on it, and it's worth checking out. Okay, wow, we've got a lot of people. Holy cow, 12 pounds, 14 pounds, 20 pounds. I'm just going to read through this. 7 kilograms, 12 pounds, 9 pounds, 15 pounds, 11 pounds, 11 pounds, 18 pounds. Wow, Johnny, that's awesome. 14 pounds. So I'm just looking at the live chat here. 8 pounds, 6 pounds, 18 pounds, 12 pounds. Holy cow. Guys, this is great. Okay, so I think we have a lot of people that are definitely going to be continuing with this kind of challenge or continuing this as a lifestyle. Let's see, we have a good question that comes in here. It says, thank you, TD. Never have done intermittent fasting. Didn't lose weight, but it's been interesting. I was already keto for 8 months and fat adapted. Happy to try switching out 20% fat for protein. Yeah, see, that happens to a lot of people that have been doing keto for a long period of time and then start to do fasting. It's because you are fat adapted. Now, it's so interesting because there's a lot of scientific literature coming out now that says that when you've been fat adapted for a long period of time, that you actually do need to potentially switch back for a short period of time to make sure that your body continues to thrive on being fat adapted. So that's why I am a big fan. If you've been doing keto for a long time, usually it's a great strategy to implement intermittent fasting with carbohydrates. And I know I'm going to see people drop off of this video when I say this because people get crazy about their carbs or anti-carb, I should say. But that's a great strategy, right? So like you do keto when you're not really doing heavy intermittent fasting. And then when it's time to implement your carbohydrates, that's when you get a bit more aggressive with your intermittent fasting. It just allows you to be in that caloric deficit, remain fat adapted, but still get your body a little bit of that glucose so you don't become glucose intolerant. That is a concern that people have with keto, is if you do keto for too long term, you do become, I say this with a grain of salt, or should I say a grain of glucose, you become somewhat glucose intolerant. Is that really bad? I personally don't think it is. I think glucose intolerance isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just the words themselves sound bad. But it just means that your body doesn't process glucose as well. But the point is, we don't really need it to process glucose that well, so who cares? However, when it comes down to fat loss, if we want to be able to get the most bang for the buck out of our keto and intermittent fasting lifestyles, it is good to cycle on some good, healthy carbs for a little bit. And that's exactly what I recommend. Go 3 months keto with periodic intermittent fasting, and then dive into a month of really aggressive intermittent fasting with 3 days, 4 days, 5 days per week, even if you're experienced, and have the carbs in the mix. It's amazing. You will probably see that your muscles fill out and you get more volumized with your muscle, but then you'll also see that at the same time, oh, I'm leaning out and I'm breaking through this plateau. It's just something to consider. Wow, so many good questions, guys. Let me go ahead and try to answer a few more. Let's see. You've talked a lot about the types of fasting, but can you speak more to the different time periods and different frequencies? Okay. Yes. So what I would generally recommend, intermittent fasting, 3 to 4 days per week, works phenomenally well for most people. I like to do a 24-hour fast 1 day per week. I find that a 24-hour fast is just a great number. I fast from evening to evening 1 day per week. It's usually on a Monday, and it just works really, really well. And what I mean by that is I didn't do it this week, but like last week, for instance, dinner time on Sunday was 6:30 p.m. And then Monday came around and I had dinner around 7. So I went a little over 24 hours. That's such a great strategy. It's such a great just to do once per week. Okay. Then when we look at, say, other prolonged fasts, like 48-hour fasts, doing those once a month or once every 6 weeks is a really good number for that. Okay. So I recommend that. Alternate day fasting is also a really good strategy if you're trying to get a little bit more aggressive about it, because that is essentially doing almost a 24-hour fast every other day. So that's a little bit more aggressive, but it's not a long-term strategy, I don't think, because it's just hard to just avoid food altogether for an entire day for the rest of your life. So something to consider. This is not a brand plug. I'm just going to have a sip of this. This is one of those Kavita probiotic drinks. It's like a kombucha, except there. I'm not even going to, I don't even want this to seem like a pitch, so I'm going to cover the label. But if you've ever had water kefir, it's really, really good stuff. It's a good alternative to kombucha. It is not fasting friendly, but it is keto friendly. So it's just a really good one if you're wanting to get the probiotic effect, but you don't want all the sugar that's in kombucha. So water kefir is where they ferment basically the water, a culture in the water, whereas kombucha, they're fermenting the sugar in the tea or the tea with the sugar. So something to think about. Anyhow, I digress. Okay, some other questions here. Thomas, I recently watched your videos on extra skin and I wanted to know, how do you properly use witch hazel? Okay, I think I should just address extra skin in general. A lot of extra skin and things like that is largely going to be a genetic thing. Okay, if you have a lot of extra skin, like I did, I was genetically predisposed to it. I genetically don't have the greatest skin. Okay, my mom is awesome. My dad, bless his heart, they didn't have the best skin. Okay, they, for whatever reason, okay, they burned easily, so their skin aged easily, and didn't have a lot of elasticity. Now, I know that I got some of those genetics, so I knew when I had gained a bunch of weight, that's why I got stretch marks. My skin just didn't have a lot of elasticity. Now, fasting, like I've talked about in a lot of videos, does allow you to tighten up your skin much faster than other means of weight loss. And that simply is because of autophagy and because it does help you recycle some of those skin cells. It does help you recycle some of that extra skin. But more importantly, it helps that migration of type 3, type 1 collagen and allows that to actually form the way that it should, which is really important for your body when it comes down to rebuilding structure. Okay, if your collagen stores are not operating properly, if they're not migrating, if they're not changing, you're not having type 1 and type 3 like you actually should, then your skin's just going to remain saggy and down, right? Fasting improves that. I will say, if you suffer from saggy skin or anything like that, I hate to break it to you, but you have to do some longer fasts. You just have to. Don't make it a huge habit, but you do need to probably try to do some 3-4 day fasts, because that's where the loose skin really tightens up. And I know it's not what everyone wants to hear, but it does make a big difference with that. Now, you asked specifically about witch hazel, because I've talked about that in videos as a topical. Witch hazel is an astringent, so it does help pull some of the oils, but what I noticed it did for me is it helped the elasticity. I don't know why, but it would help me tighten things up. I don't know if it would just help pull the oils or help pull some of the extra moisture. I don't know what it was, because it seemed counterproductive. But I had heard it from a doctor friend of mine back in the day, and he had plastic surgeon. He used to have all his patients apply witch hazel after they'd have tummy tucks and things like that to help it tighten up. So he suggested it to me, and it worked really well. So I wish I had really solid answers for you, but in terms of how to apply it, I was applying it like 3-4 times per day. I was just always on where I had loose skin. Most of the loose skin that I had, I still have it, is around like my love handle area in the back. If you look at some of the pictures of me and things like that, I had some serious stretch marks there. Like, they're bad. They're really bad on my back. And I still have extra skin there. So anyhow, answer some more questions here. I apologize for rambling on that a little bit. Um, let's see. What kind of healthy carbs would you recommend besides quinoa? I prefer any kind of carbohydrate that's not going to be the typical grains. Okay. So quinoa technically is a grain, but it's in a different classification. So quinoa's, yes. Okay. I like teff, Teff. Teff is a really interesting grain. One that's going to be a lot better in terms of lower or no gluten in it, really. So lower amounts of what are called prolamins, which can have an effect on your body. So I recommend things like that. Small amounts of sweet potatoes. I also recommend messing around with what are called resistant starches. Okay, resistant starches are where you, let's say a good example is heating up some baked potato or heating up some rice, preferably a baked potato because rice, the grain issues are bad. Okay, and then you let it cool and then you reheat it. What that does is that changes it from resistant type 1 to resistant type 2, RS2 starches. I have another video coming out on that in March. But basically, when you manipulate the heating of those starch chains, it changes how they absorb in the body. So, hey, can I ask everyone to please hit that like button? We've got 1.5 thousand people on this broadcast, and I would love to see that like button, that like number hit up over 1,000. That would be awesome. So just appreciate it, everybody. Just smash that button if you can. Let's see. How to prevent muscle loss while losing weight. Okay, well, the simplest way is keeping your nitrogen balance high, keeping your protein levels high. That's the simplest way, but it goes much more beyond that. I would highly recommend, again, training. If you're concerned with losing muscle, work out in the morning and break your fast shortly after your workout. Okay, so that's like switch your schedule around so that you're working out in the morning and breaking your fast in the morning after your workout. So you might start eating breakfast and a lunch and then fasting throughout the afternoon and evening and then working out. What that's going to do is it's going to allow you to capitalize on your testosterone levels being elevated in the morning. You're going to capitalize on growth hormone levels being a little bit higher, the pulses in the morning. You're also going to capitalize on the fat burning state of your fast, and then you're going to capitalize on insulin sensitivity. I know it's difficult for some people, but that's a really powerful tip. Okay, so it definitely makes a big difference. Do not worry about sipping on things like BCAAs all the time. You don't need to do any of that stuff. Timing is everything when it comes down to preserving muscle. Ted asks, why can't we fast every day? You can fast every day. And I talk about this, I sound like such a broken record, but you can fast every day. But the problem with fasting every day is what's going to happen is your body's just going to adjust to that. So as long as you are okay with that and fasting every day, then that's being part of your life, then that's okay. Okay, someone says, my visceral fat increased when I was doing keto and fasting. What gives? It all depends on when you test yourself. So some of the studies show, or at least allude to, that when you are fasting, at least the studies are with fasting, not with keto, but I'm going to assume that they're the same because it's very similar mitochondrial function and very similar uncoupling protein and browning of white tissue and things like that. What ends up happening is visceral fat is largely brown fat. So it's kind of confusing because visceral fat, which is the unhealthy fat that leaks inflammatory cytokines into our liver, triggers inflammation, triggers all these issues, it's technically a brown fat, which is good. Okay, brown fat is good, but we don't want visceral fat. So what gives? Well, the problem is keto and fasting encourage the browning of white fat by increasing the number of uncoupling protein 1 and uncoupling protein 2. So what ultimately this means is that we could be taking adipose tissue that's just our unsightly body fat, and it migrates to our visceral fat. Now, if you're early on in your keto and fasting journey, this is bad because you're noticing it. But if you continue with it, then your body starts to burn that. Okay, so yes, you have a temporary migration of white fat to brown fat, adipose to visceral, but it does go away. It does end. So it's just interesting, because I'm glad that you brought that up. It's a very intriguing question, very intriguing thing to bring up based on, all the research that I've seen. I literally filmed a video like 2-3 weeks ago called Thin on the Outside, Fat on the Inside, specifically talking about that because one of the gentlemen that's on my medical advisory board that is at Oxford University, he's a ketone PhD researcher. He talked about some of these case studies that he's seen and some of these subjects that he's seen where it's the same kind of thing where they test and they find their visceral fat levels go up. It's very interesting stuff, but all totally okay once you actually start understanding how the science works. But if you get concerned, always check with your doctor. Let's see. Sorry, guys. I'm looking to see any more questions. Okay, we've got, does L-carnitine have any significant fat burning effects when working out fasted? If you are fat adapt, that's actually a great question, and it's somewhat of a trick question. I'm going to write it down because I want to do a video on this one later, so bear with me. Okay, see, I wrote it down because I want to see it later. I want to do this. That's a really great idea for a video. I'm still going to address it here in this chat. So carnitine and the carnitine transferase, that shuttle, okay, that is responsible for allowing fat to get into the mitochondria, okay, for allowing things in glucose and all that, acetyl coenzyme A, everything to get into the mitochondria. When you are fasting, you don't need to do that if you are fasting long enough or if you are doing keto. Why? Because that carnitine transferase, that carnitine pathway, that shuttle pathway, is not required to get ketones into the mitochondria. So if you are fasting long enough to where you have ketones present, your mitochondria will fuel from those ketones, which therefore does not require carnitine. So if you take a carnitine supplement while you are fasting or doing keto, it's not hurting anything, but it's wasting your money because you don't need it. Okay, those ketones, and when you're fat adapted, you have a lot of them. You don't need that carnitine because that can just those ketones cross through what's called the double membrane of the mitochondria. So the mitochondria is normally somewhat shielded, and it needs this carnitine to kind of shuttle it in. So normally, these fuels will ride on carnitine to get into the mitochondria to create energy. Not in this case, not necessary, because ketones are special in that case. JP says, come visit Australia with the family. I would love to come to Australia. I've never been to Australia and would absolutely love to. And it would be really, really cool to set up some kind of meet and greet out there in Australia. So I know I've got a huge amount of Australian fans. Okay, Meg says, sorry, I'm fat adapted, but I have days that I also have some carbs. I think I'm eating too many fats, but it's not much. My question is when my, when I'm seeing, basically what she asks is, if I'm starting to actually experience it coming out the other end a lot, does that mean that I'm eating too much fat? Common question, not quite always phrased in the terminology that you use that I'm not going to say. It was kind of funny. You could have a little bit of a gallbladder issue. Okay, if your gallbladder is not functioning super, super well for whatever reason, genetic, biological, DNA, whatever. Okay, it could just be that you're not metabolizing a lot of those fats and it's causing you to just expel them. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're eating too much fats in the way of for your metabolism or for fat loss or anything like that. But if you're having that issue, you need to back down on the fats a little bit. Good question. Can cinnamon produce similar results as metformin? I love this question because I have talked about taking cinnamon capsules just before breaking your fast, because what it does is it brings GLUT4 transporters to the surface of a cell, and it has a similar response to the body as insulin. It works a lot like metformin. So for those of you, I'm not a doctor, so I have to be very careful saying this, that are diabetic or anything like that, are familiar with metformin, you will know that that's a very important thing. Anyhow, it's a compounded drug, pharmaceutical. It's used to help regulate blood sugar. Cinnamon has a very similar effect. So when you are about to break a fast and you're going to have carbs, if you have some cinnamon right before, it will stabilize your blood sugar, and it will make it so that even if you do have a little bit of potential glucose intolerance, it's going to make life a little bit easier. So yes, cinnamon is very, very good. It also can help lessen cortisol levels, which means when you do break your fast, you have less potential of fat getting stored. Now, what I do want to say, especially for those of you that are starting to make this more of a lifestyle, make it a habit to control and reduce stress right before you break your fast. Okay. Whether that be through supplementation, whether that be through meditation, through exercise, whatever. Cortisol, when elevated, is only bad if you are eating in conjunction with it. So if you have levels of insulin that are high alongside cortisol levels that are high, that's when you store fat. Okay, that's when cortisol causes you to store fat. Otherwise, cortisol is not that bad. So what we need to do is we need to lessen the cortisol levels before we break our fast, because when we break our fast, insulin levels will go up. So we don't want cortisol levels to be up too. So we want to go ahead and we want to calm ourselves before we break our fast. Cinnamon can do that, but it also helps lessen the impact of the glucose, of the insulin. Okay, so it has that powerful effect there. So anyhow, I just definitely recommend that. Hey guys, I do want to say really quick, just like I mentioned before, just because they're a big sponsor of this challenge and they've helped everything out, down below, special link to still get the special pricing on ButcherBox. And also I'm going to be doing a giveaway where I'm going to be giving away 10 boxes of ButcherBox. So I want you guys to just keep checking back on the channel in the community tab. So if anyone's interested in just participating in a giveaway, it's going to be super, super easy. It's not like you have to be involved in a whole lot. I'll make it super simple. Be giving away like a $300 box of ButcherBox to 10 different people. So if everyone is interested in me doing a giveaway, just comment in the live chat, just say yes, giveaway. Okay. Cause it's just, I don't know. I like doing these a few times per year because I like giving people that maybe haven't gotten a chance to try it to, I don't know, give it a shot. Yeah. Okay. It looks like a lot of people are into the giveaway idea. So perfect. I just like doing those kind of things. I also have that Chomps giveaway going on right now. Let's see some other questions here. Okay, someone says, I've heard you say combining fats and carbs are bad when breaking a fast. What about fats and protein post-workout? Does the fat still go into the cells? So here's the thing, Matt. When you break a fast after, or actually even just after a workout, you have to remember two things, okay? Fats are going to slow down the absorption of the protein. Okay, so why do you really want that? Like really, whether you're keto or not, you have to ask yourself, like, why? Why? They're not doing anything other than slowing down the absorption of the protein, which is slowing down your protein synthesis. Like, it just doesn't make sense. I think we have to remember that, especially with this keto culture, and it's a funny thing because like I'm the keto guy on YouTube, right? But I also try to be real because we have to address what some of the keto zealots are talking about that makes no sense. Like, why should we just be loading ourselves up with tons of fats when there doesn't need to be a practical use for them at that point in time? So right after you're done working out, it's easy to think, oh, I want to have fats because I want to stimulate my ketone levels, but it's not going to help you much. It's not going to do anything for you because it's just going to slow down your protein absorption and it's going to stand in the way of you burning more fat. The other thing you have to remember is you have independent insulin receptors that are separate and apart from your liver, that are individual satellite insulin receptors and insulin growth or insulin-like growth factor that's in your muscle cells. When you're done working out and you consume protein and or carbohydrates, you stimulate those satellite insulin cells or insulin-like growth factor, but also you have this peripheral insulin response that is independent from your liver. What that means is that you have an opportunity to have a good amount of protein, even a little bit of carbohydrate that's going to allow you to grow and build muscle without kicking you out of keto. If you have fats, you just stand in the way of that. So I hope that answers the question. It's simple, but I mean, it really is true. Okay, I'm going to answer one more good question here. There's sorry, that's a hard one to answer right here. 1 minute here. A good question. George says, you say that ground beef is a fast protein. How is it? And it has fats and slows down protein absorption. That's a very good question. Well, first of all, it depends, right? Depends how much fat you're consuming, how much fat is in the ground meat. I know I mentioned in a video when I was talking about the fastest absorbing proteins, and I did mention that ground meat is going to absorb. Now, the studies have shown that, okay? Studies show that the minced and ground meats absorb faster than the non-minced meats. It's simple digestion. So if you were to take, it's apples to apples, right? If you were to take a steak with 20 grams of fat and the same amount of ground beef with 20 grams of fat, the point is that the ground beef is still going to absorb faster. That's just all that means. It's the mechanical digestion, okay? Minced meat will absorb faster. If you're going to have a ground meat of some kind, I usually recommend like a ground chicken or a ground turkey that is lean, because then you get that's why whenever I write plans for people or anything like that, I talk about that. I a lot of times have them break their fast with ground turkey, lean ground turkey, because it's lean and it's ground. So they're going to absorb it faster than if they were to eat, say, a chicken breast or something like that. So I hope that answers that question and gives you a little bit of insight there. Anyhow, you guys, I've got to go ahead and wrap this up. You guys are super, super awesome. I mean, it just blows me away that so many people will take time out of their Monday night to hang out with me and do these live broadcasts. And I kind of want to continue doing them even after this challenge is over, because I don't know, this is a good way for me to connect with you guys. We just got to get more people on them. 1.5 thousand people hanging on for an hour is great, but I'd love to get more people and make this a big thing. But I think a lot of it comes down to the hand of the YouTube gods. It's out of our control, right? The YouTube gods control a lot of this. And you guys have probably seen that algorithmically, so many YouTube channels are suffering right now. It's really tough. I'm glad that, we're growing 5, 6, 7,000 subscribers per day right now. So, our channel is growing, but I'm seeing a lot of channels really struggling right now because the algorithms have changed. And it's frustrating and it's sad, because the YouTube game is definitely different. And we're definitely having to create more and more and more and more content just to stay relevant and just to stay in front of you. So if you guys notice that I'm posting videos every day, first of all, I love doing that. So don't get me wrong. Second of all, we're having to do it for a reason. If we don't post every day, then we cannot reach the audience, because YouTube is serving the content differently. If I can also just be real for a second, this channel is supported and continues to grow because sponsored placements. Okay. If we cannot, so in order to keep the channel going, it's like we have to have more sponsors. And in order to have more sponsors, we have to be able to create more videos to satisfy those sponsors too. So guys, I hate how it has to be like this. Like the days where YouTube used to just be so great, where you could just hop on and reach millions of people. It's so different now. It really is. Like, on one hand, it's great because it's forced me to run this like a business. But on the other hand, it's a bummer because you really have to beat yourself up. So if you ever wonder, like, wow, Thomas posts a lot of content. He posts like every day. It has to get done. Otherwise, we don't get the visibility and the channel can't stay afloat economically. It's interesting. So I just appreciate everybody here, because everybody is really, really understanding, and everybody always, I know you guys appreciate my transparency, and it's my mission. I will always be truthful with you. And I will always tell you how this channel works economically, because you deserve to know. You deserve to know that, like, there's sponsors for a reason. Sponsors like ButcherBox and Thrive and things like that. They're there for a reason, not just because they need to be or want to be. But if you understand the driving force behind, like, the economy of YouTube, and understand, I don't know. Anyhow, I don't want to ramble. The point is that you guys are great, because you guys being here are the loyal ones that are a huge part of my daily life. And I just appreciate you guys so much. And I know you appreciate what I put out there too, but I don't think you have any idea how much I appreciate you guys. So thank you so much. I will see you guys soon. I'll try to hop on another one next week so that we can at least wrap up and recap a little bit. In the interim, have a tremendous week and keep on rocking and rolling. Got some amazing content coming out this week. Let's get one last round of thumbs up. And please, guys, just give ButcherBox a shot down below. Okay. And also, I put my free dining out cheat sheet. So it's like a cheat sheet to help you out with eating out and things like that. I put that down below in the description as well. Okay. Talk to you guys soon. Have a great evening.